Om yo diksha matere chayati saptaham pracharante saptavaisarshenya prana pranan diksha pranareva pranan diksha mavarundhe. Om. Hello, welcome back to the Yajam course. We're trying a new technology. I'm in a hall today, a pavilion of some sort, it looks like. So we were talking last time about the different Vedic rituals and talking about the Sandhya Vandanam, the daily basic ritual of offerings of water. And my hand keeps disappearing. And the saying of the Gayatri mantra. So let's share our slideshow. So then we have the image of the priest. We're sharing the right screen. Yeah. So we have the image of the priest making the tarpanam or the argyam, the offerings of water. He's in a sacred temple tank. And so the Sandhya times, these junction between day and night and day, and the midday, the midpoint between sunrise and sunset, and the midnight, although the householders don't typically observe this. Just the sannyasis are supposed to observe this. They stay up or get up in the middle of the night and observe that time between the sunset and the sunrise. And as I said before, I'm not sure of the mantras for that. And I didn't get a chance to search it. I'd like to search it. I'm very curious about that. What deities do they pray to at those times? So let's talk more about the nature of these sacred times. Midnight have a very sacred nature. All of nature responds to these times. The animals become silent at these times in respect of the sacred energy. If you listen at that time, if you're sitting and you know sunrise time, it's very easy now. We can just ask our phones, sunrise, sunset, and it may be a couple of minutes off. There are different ways that it is calculated. It used to be, it was fairly close. It was within 30 seconds what I would find, because we'd have to get very official times sent from some government agencies or something. We didn't have Google in those days that we could just search it. But now there's so many sources, and there are many different ways that people might try to calculate it when you first see the image of the sun come over the horizon or whatever. But I think there's some scientific timing, and they say you see a refraction of the sunlight rising above the horizon. Like if you're at a beach or something, we're in the mountains, we wouldn't see the sun coming up over the horizon. We'd see mountains for a long time, and it would start to get light and we'd still just see mountains. But if you're at the ocean, you can see flat out, then you see the sun coming up. And when you start to see what looks like the sun, they say that's not actually the sun yet. It's a refraction of the sun's light shining above the horizon. And at that time, it's safe to gaze at the sun. And they have the practice of gazing at the sun that they recommend that you can do. At that time, if you're at that sort of altitude with that sort of flat horizon, you can look out on, they say for 2 or 5 minutes or something, it's safe to gaze directly at the sunlight. Of course, once the sun has actually risen, we don't want to do that. We'll go blind. It's so bright, it will destroy our eyesight. So we don't want to do that. But it can actually be good right before the image of the sun disappears, or right after the sun has risen, to gaze at the sun. Of course, you want to learn that from a teacher directly. You don't want to just take my word for it and then go and try to do it. It's too potentially dangerous. But so the calculations may vary. So what I'm saying, if you look up that timing online, be careful. Know that it's probably within 2 minutes or 3 or 5 minutes from that time, but it may not be the precise time. And also, does your phone say the same time? Is it calibrated properly? Maybe in the city, there's not so much issue with that, but where we are in the mountains, it could be that the phone is off. Sometimes, I try to do the compass on the phone and it tells me, I know I'm facing north or whatever. That's north, I know, but it'll say, oh, that's west or something. Or if we look at the Google map and we're walking around, walking from house to house and seeing where we are on the Google map, sometimes it will have, the satellites will have us in a different position. So even your phone may be telling you the wrong time a little bit. So for that reason, we need to be a little bit cautious, but if we get that time, and then we have to be very mindful for about 5 minutes around that time. And if we pay attention, one thing you'll notice is as the sun starts to rise, the animals start waking up and making noises. Of course, there's nocturnal animals too, but a lot of the animals, they get up with the sun like people are designed to do. Of course, we don't do that now. It's one way in which we're going against nature. People stay up late at night with the artificial light, and they do activities at night, and they sleep half of the day, and they wake up in midday. Maybe they're hungover from drinking the night before, and then they go out and they're drinking, and it's dangerous to go out at night. People are putting themselves at danger, and they're going against nature, and they don't realize it. We really tap into a lot of energy if we get up at that sacred time before sunrise, the Brahma Muhurta. If you're awake when the sun rises, you really get energized by that time. But it's very sacred, very still, very quiet. Those early morning hours, even right after sunrise, are pretty quiet. People are not so active, and the people who are active, they're not bothering you. They're on their way to work. They may drive by, but they won't stop and bother you. So it's a very peaceful time, easy time to meditate and do sadhana without becoming distracted by what's happening all around. We don't have telemarketers calling at that time. We don't have people knocking on the door delivering packages. We don't have neighbors coming to greet us. It's a very still, very peaceful time. But in that precise moment, you'll notice building up to it, all the animals start making noises. The birds start chirping, chirp, 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 whatever kind of sounds they make. And then right at that moment, they become very silent for a moment. It's as if they're stopping to bow to the sacred energy of that time. It's really amazing. If you pay attention, you'll notice it surely. And even in a city, I've noticed, even in a city, all the electronical sounds and things, they maybe don't stop as much as the animals, but they do get more silent. And even the commotion of the people becomes more silent because something very special happens to the anatomy. It's unconscious to these people, but even all the commotion of people driving around, beeping their horns, yelling at each other, hey, why are you cutting in front of me in the car? All this kind of commotion we get in a city. Hey, shut up down there. I'm thinking of like New York City or something. People in New York do like that. Hey, shut up down there, buddy. Shut up. Shut up, buddy. Yeah. Even all that kind of noise, it becomes a little bit more quiet because something happens to the anatomy. It's not something people are doing consciously out of respect. It's something that happens and affects them. And it really can empower our spiritual practice a great deal at that moment. And so we'll describe what that is. It happens to the anatomy. People are so much in their minds and so out of touch with nature, they do not notice the sacred nature of these times. It has a certain effect on the mind and body. These times have a very peaceful energy, which energizes and revitalizes us if we tap into the energy of the sacred time. These times are powerful each day to empower our spiritual practice. So let's go to our next slide that has an image of this guy here. And it says Swara Yoga. There's a whole system of yoga that's not extremely well known called Swara Yoga. Yoga of the breath. I know a bit about this science of Swara Yoga, mystical science. We can't really call it science, although it does kind of correspond to some of modern science as people's modern thoughts about gender are changing some. It's starting to go more against the Vedic tradition, the wisdom of the sages. In earlier times, science was starting to confirm the wisdom of the sages, but now there's so much push, I guess, to say that women and men are exactly equal. And, you know, men have put down women, that men have oppressed women and suppressed their ability to do things and told them to suppress their womanly qualities and this kind of thing. And it's not valued. The feminine qualities are not valued in our Western materialistic society. And so women have started to devalue the feminine qualities within themselves, and they want to try to manifest all the masculine qualities to prove they can do anything that a man can do. And it's only natural. Why would they not want to if they've been told, you cannot do that, you cannot do that, you cannot? Of course they can. But is it in line with their nature? Maybe not always so much so. The feminine has been put down so much, the scientists are no longer saying that the right and left hemisphere of the brain correspond to these universal spiritual qualities of divine feminine, divine masculine. But so in Swara Yoga, of course, in all traditions of yoga, we have nadis, these energy channels and systems within the body. They're not physical, they're energetic. One may go from your head to your leg. They go in all different ways. It's in the energetic body. In the science of marma therapy and Ayurveda, you have knowledge of the way these are connected, and you can push a point on your hand, Talahridaya. This will affect your heart and so many other things. This will calm you down. Knowledge like this the sages had of the way the energies are flowing in the body. So the three main channels in any system of yoga, the three main nadis are the Ida nadi, Pingala, and Sushumna. These have to do with the breath to some extent. And so in this diagram we have here, it shows a yogi sitting in meditation. There's a correspondence of the elements, the 7 main chakras, and some extra chakras are there. It looks like above the Akya chakra at the third eye point, they have Soma chakra in this diagram. I think it's very small, difficult for me to see, but I think it's there. So there's about 8 or 9 chakras shown here. And there's of course infinite chakras inside the body. There's the chakras below the base of the spine that most people's consciousness is always dwelling in, that are not very well known. There's 7 chakras below the base of the spine. And then when we start to come into spiritual consciousness, the consciousness comes into the higher chakras here that go up along the spine. And so in these first 5 chakras we have in this illustration, it corresponds to the elements. The bottom, Muladhara chakra, it relates to the earth element. And then the next, the Swadhisthana chakra, has to do with the water element. And then Manipur has to do with fire. Anahata has to do with the air. And Vishuddhi or Vishuddha chakra has to do with the Akasha, the space or the ether. So this is included in this diagram. And the Bija mantras are written here in this diagram as well that relate to those elements. Of course, the chakra, these are not the Bij mantras of the chakras. It's a current misunderstanding, trying to simplify the system. Of course, chakras is not a system for healing. That's a New Age tradition. That's not the traditional way that they're used. Chakras are a technique for meditation to help give us access into higher realms of consciousness, and they relate to places in the subtle body that the consciousness will flow through as we go into deep meditative states of consciousness. The yogis only experience these. Most people, they don't experience the awakened. And so it's when the consciousness flows in Sushumna Nadi, the central channel that goes straight up the center of the spine and up and comes out this Brahma Randra at the top of the head. When you pierce through there, you go into a state of samadhi, they say. And so it's the Kundalini Shakti, this power of awakening that remains dormant at the base of the spine. It's like a serpent. People are scared of it. It can move like a serpent. But so normally people's awareness is not flowing at all through Sushumna chakra. They're in the lower chakras all the time. They never experience these higher states, typically, at least not that much. And so their consciousness is flowing either through Ida Nadi or Pingala. So the Ida Nadi starts on the left side at the base of the spine. And this image I like because it shows these nadis are said to go up and they go around the chakras. So the Ida will start on the left and then go around the one chakra, but it winds up back on the left-hand side. It comes up the back of the head and comes out the left nostril, Ida Nadi. Pingala Nadi starts on the right side and it twists, 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 and it comes up and out the right nostril. These relate to the opposite hemispheres of the brain. Ida Nadi relates to the left side of the body, the right hemisphere of the brain. Pingala Nadi relates to the right side of the body, the left hemisphere of the brain. And it used to be that the scientists were doing studies on the two hemispheres of the brain, and they were finding that each hemisphere of the brain had the qualities that the sages used related to the Ida and the Pingala. But now they're starting to say, but there was also a sense of Ida is feminine. Ida is lunar. Ida has these qualities of the feminine, creative, nurturing, passive, quiet, shy, introverted, modest, these kind of things. Pingala had these qualities of, they said it relate to the masculine and Shiva and Purusha, not Prakriti, not Shakti. Shiva, Purusha, and divine masculine, and it's aggressive. It's not as doubting, it's not as negative, but it's not as creative, and it's aggressive. It's good for acting. And so the texts on Swara Yoga have told us when one is active, when the other is active, certain tasks, it's better to do those tasks. If you have to go debate with someone, you should be breathing through the Pingala. If you have to draw a painting, a pretty picture, play some music, support someone, nurture someone, take care of a sick child or animal, then you should be breathing through the Ida Nadi. And science used to confirm this, but then the scientists started to think along the terms of this modern thinking and say, well, no, that makes females think that they're bad if they're emotional or they're more introverted. Females don't have to be introverted. And so it started to skew by our expectations, our desires of what to see, the scientific results. The sages had wisdom of the two qualities, two nadis. Of course, both masculine and feminine qualities are in all people. And in yoga, we balance these two. We go beyond the duality. You're not female, your soul's not female, your soul's not male. Physical body may have a gender like this, but the soul does not. In the next lifetime, you may be born in a body with the opposite gender. But all of these qualities are within each person. And so if we pay very close attention, you can tell which nostril you're breathing through. Every person, they'll breathe predominantly through one nostril or the other. For a healthy person, this will change about every 2 hours. So, if you pay attention, you can tell. It may help. You can cover one nostril. Do you breathe easily through the other? See, I'm breathing through the left, Ida. Probably they'd say for talking to you and explaining to you, it'd be better if I'm in Pingala. But for getting you to feel and experience, maybe it's better I'm in Ida. I can just feel I'm in Ida, but if you cover, see, breathe effortlessly. Then here, takes force, it's making noises. You might be able to tell just by if you stick your fingers carefully under the nostrils, which one do you feel the breath coming? It feels from the left. Also, you could take a mirror You have like a compact, or you could go in the bathroom and blow on the mirror. You should get a larger pattern of condensation on the mirror from the active nadi. And then also the inactive nadi, whatever condensation comes there, it will dissipate more quickly. The active nadi will dissipate less quickly. So in this way, we can tell which nadi we are breathing through. Like I said, certain tasks, it will be better if you're in one nadi or the other. The Swara yogis, they know the techniques to change the nadi. And in most cases, they can just do it. I used to be able to just do it, but I don't practice so much anymore. Now I can use some techniques and change it if I want to. If when you're starting to get sick, you notice the moment you start to get sick and you change the predominant nostril, so you won't get sick. Of course, when you go somewhere, if you have awareness of this, you can step in leading with the foot of the active nadi, and that will be more auspicious. A lot happens with our breath. If you go into a place where there's a lot of bad energy, you have to go. Maybe your child went to some place he shouldn't have gone to, a nightclub, and a lot of bad energy and drugs is there. And you don't want to take on that energy or whatever, but you have to go and rescue your child from being there. When you go in, breathe out very deeply, breathe in more shallow breaths. And you won't take as much energy from that place. You'll leave more there. If you go to, conversely, if you go to a sacred place like a temple and you want to receive a lot of energy, breathe in very deeply and don't breathe out as much. You'll absorb that sacred energies more. But when you go somewhere, lead with the foot of the active nadi. When you wake up in the morning, before you get out of bed, notice which nostril you're breathing through, they say, and then lead by stepping onto the floor with the foot of the active nadi. And of course, the Swara yogis can tell us all about things based upon the nostril. Beyond this, in this cycle that happens in every 2 hours, we switch from one to the other, but then there's a cycle of all the 5 elements in the breath within that period. Within that 2-hour period that I'm breathing through Ida, I'll cycle through all the elements. Prithvi, earth, water, fire, air, ether. And from this, we can tell a lot. Someone comes and asks a question, and based upon where they're standing, the Swara yogi can answer their question. He pays attention. The planets are in the breath, the elements are in the breath, and a lot, we don't need astrology. Even the astrologers in the astrological texts, it tells us that when we're looking at the chart, we need to pay attention to the breath. And if you have to go and you're having some contest, or you're having an argument, a debate or something with someone, you can defeat them especially if you're in Pingala Nadi, but if you keep them to that side of Pingala Nadi, then you'll defeat them always. You can win a war in that way as the general of the army, to keep the enemy's army to the side of the active Nadi, especially if that's Pingala, which supports that type of action. But so certain actions are supported by one nadi or the other. I'm just giving you a very, very brief description of all this. It's a very vast subject. We should do a whole nother course on Swara Yoga and the practices and how to use it and how to. We don't need the astrological charts. We don't need to know where the planets are if we pay attention to the breath. We can tell everything just from that. We can answer anybody's questions. And so, it's a very vast subject. I'm just giving a brief introduction. But so what happens in a deep state of meditation is that the breath, we go beyond the emotional mind, the right hemisphere of the brain, Ida Nadi on the left of the body. We go beyond the intellectual mind, left hemisphere of the brain, right Pingala, right side of the body, Pingala. We go beyond these 2 normal states of consciousness, and we go into a deep meditative state of consciousness. So if we're meditating, the breath starts to go through both. And you'll notice for a yogi in deep meditation, he's not breathing. If you put the mirror under his, it would be equal on both sides. You'll notice this also for a sick person. The Ayurvedic texts tell us it's a bad thing for a person to breathe through sushumna for too long. Maybe it's different for a yogi in a deep state of samadhi. They may stay that way for 7 years and not move and not take food. But for a normal person to be breathing through sushumna is not good. The Ayurvedic texts tell us it will kill the body to breathe for a prolonged time through the sushumna nadi. And they say it's a sign of imminent death. So if there's a chronically ill patient having difficulties, and then he starts breathing through sushumna, the doctor knows he's soon to pass. This is what the Ayurvedic texts tell us. Of course, all these yogic practices like anuloma, viloma, pranayama are designed to help balance masculine, feminine. Soham pranayama. We breathe out, we breathe in, and with one breath we say so, silently, of course, because we're breathing. With one breath we say hum. This relates to Shiva Shakti. It balances, and anuloma, viloma. We do this mudra here, where we don't use the middle and the index finger. Cover one nostril, cover one nostril. We breathe in, and we may hold the breath. We breathe out. We breathe in. We may hold the breath. We breathe out. You don't need to even hold the breath. You can just change the nostril. Just breathe in like your normal breathing. Out through right. In through right. Out through left. In through left. Out through right. You just switch it like that. It starts to balance you. It starts to pull awareness into the meditative state. Starts to pull consciousness into Sushumna Nadi. It balances the emotional, balances the intellectual. It's very grounding, very balancing, but it balances our Ida and Pingala, our divine feminine, our divine masculine, and it starts to bring awareness into a higher meditative state. So that's one reason this is a very, very good pranayama practice. No need to deepen the breath, no need to hold anything, just change the nadi that you're breathing through. It's very interesting. So at that sacred time, the sunrise and the sunset in particular, for about a minute, the breath is going to naturally flow through Sushumna Nadi. Because at that time, for a healthy person, at the time of sunrise, sunset, and midday, midnight, for the healthy person, for a sick person, all bets are off. It may be slightly different. It may be similar, but it may be slightly different. For a healthy person at that time of sunrise, right at that moment of actual sunrise, when the animals become quiet, then our consciousness, because the nadis are changing. We change from the left to the right, or the right to the left. As they change, for an instant, we'll breathe through Sushumna both. But at that time of sunrise, sunset, we're going to breathe for about a minute, possibly 30 seconds or a minute through Sushumna. We're in a meditative state of consciousness then. We can extend that period by meditating at that time that we're breathing through Sushumna. And we can go deeper into our meditation because our anatomy is already supporting it. Usually we have to do all these yoga practices. We have to do the pranayama. We might have to do mantra and all kind of other techniques, asana, to get ourselves ready to start going into Sushumna. At that time of day, it's naturally happening. And they say certain tasks are auspicious to be done when you're breathing through Pingala, certain things auspicious to be done when you're breathing through Ida. Nothing, no worldly task is auspicious to do when we breathe through Sushumna. If you eat food, the food becomes poison to you. If there's food in your belly at that time, you won't digest it well. It's like an eclipse. During the eclipse, they say we shouldn't eat food or have undigested food in our belly because it will become like poison and we won't digest it. It will remain in the system as toxins. Same at this time of day, to a lesser extent, the energy of Sushumna, it's like Rahu Ketu, it's like the eclipse. Because Ida is like the moon, Pingala is like the sun. Sushumna is this serpent of awakening. It's then Rahu Ketu is a serpent that caused the eclipse of the moon and the sun. When we get rid of the moon, the intellect, the emotion, the emotions, the feeling, the intuition, all this kind of thing. When we get rid of also then the solar, the intellect, the analytical, the logical, the rational, when we transcend, we go beyond to spiritual consciousness. It's good for meditation. It's not, if any task that you start at that time, you're going to fail that task. Don't have an important business meeting. Don't make a decision at that time. Don't launch a big product during the sunrise, sunset time. You'll tend to fail. But so that time is very important, very sacred. And the time before sunrise is very important as well. It's called Brahma Muhurta. It's a period of 1 hour and 36 minutes before sunrise, or 48 minutes before sunrise. Brahma Muhurta is considered an extremely auspicious time each day. It's the most auspicious time in the day. It means literally the time period, Muhurta, of God, Brahma. And so people who have studied astrology are familiar with the term Muhurta. It means a period of time. In the Muhurta astrology, we select a time based upon astrological factors that may be auspicious. A Muhurta is a time period in the day. Muhurta also can mean moment, and in that case it means moment, but in this case, Muhurta is a time period of a day of 48 minutes. There are precisely 34 Muhurtas in a day. 24 hours in a day multiplied by 60 minutes per hour is 1,440 minutes in a day. 1,440 minutes in a day divided by 48 minutes per Muhurta equals exactly 30 Muhurtas per day. Some people will say that Brahma Muhurta begins at 4:30 in the morning, but this is an approximation. The time of Brahma Muhurta actually varies according to the time of sunrise. Brahma Muhurta is the second Muhurta before sunrise. And it begins 1 hour and 36 minutes before the sunrise, and it ends 48 minutes before the sunrise. Okay, so yeah, that's what it means up at the top here. It starts 1 hour and 36 minutes before sunrise and ends 48 minutes before sunrise. What time did the sun rise today? Today here in Virginia, it may have been different times if you're in a different place for you where you are. We're figuring out what time did the sun rise today? 6:11 a.m. So from that time, can I see a calculator? From that time, we need to subtract these times. So 6:11, we have to subtract 90. Let's see. 1 hour will take us back to, so it'll be 5:11, and then we have to take away 36 minutes. So around 4:40 or so this morning, it started and then it ended. You could subtract from the 6. We don't need to figure. You guys know how to do math probably better than I do. From the 6:11, we could subtract the 48 minutes, and then we know when it ended today. So it's close to 4:30 today, but the sunrise and sunset time varies a lot through the year here. There's a time recently the sun was setting at almost 9 p.m. and now the sun is setting more closer to 8. It's getting closer and closer to 8 p.m. In the winter, it might set at 6 p.m. And so that all changes these calculations. So the Brahma Muhurta is considered the ideal time to rise and begin our day with ritual bath and spiritual practice. We should not sleep eat or do worldly tasks or strenuous or stressful activities during this time. The Ayurvedic texts say that it promotes health, revitalizes the body, increases immunity, prevents disease, and increases longevity to rise at this time. This is a time in which nature is very silent and the physiology is functioning in a very supportive way to deepen our spiritual practice. The end of the Brahma Muhurta corresponds roughly with the beginning of twilight, though the timing of this will vary according to geographical location and possibly the time of the year also. So by then we should be deep in sadhana, doing our practice, chanting, performing a yajam, whatever, to really prepare ourselves for that moment. And then at that time of the sunrise, hopefully we'll be in a deep state of meditation, realizing God, having a deep spiritual experience, maybe even experiencing samadhi. We can tap into that time each day, and the practice of Sandhya Vandanam helps us to tap into that practice. That was the Vedic tradition. There's a modern practice of Agnihotra that's a simplified version, and we will go more into the difference between what was the Vedic practice of Agnihotra. It's one of the basic, there are two basic daily fire rituals, Alpasanam and Agnihotra. For a married householder, of course, the sannyasis can't perform any fire ritual, they say, traditionally, because the fire has karma, it attaches them to karma. Also, they have to take a sankalpam and they have to sit there till the end. Maybe God has other plans for them. My image froze. I don't know if you could hear. It's unfrozen now. So, maybe God has different plans for the sannyasi and wants them to leave in the middle of the ritual so they can't be bound to this. So traditionally, a renunciate doesn't perform the fire ceremony. But in this modern practice of Agnihotra, the offering is made, there's no preliminary rituals. They just start a fire. And then at that moment of sunrise, sunset, they make the offerings. And then they meditate. That's a good practice. It cuts right to the point, cuts right to the chase. For modern people, it can be a good practice to help them to tap into that sacred time. And it gets right to the point of making an offering to the fire so the devas can assist energetically with what's going on through the offering being made, through the energy of the mantras. But then they don't have to learn complex rituals and complex mantras. They don't have to get up 2 hours early and then start doing an intense practice. Most people don't have that level of commitment to get up so early in the morning, to do hours of practice a day. And so for a lot of people, that's maybe a good recommendation. At least they get up before sunrise. That's good. If you can't get up in Brahma Muhurta, maybe at least you can get up before sunrise. It's not always possible for us. Some people, they have a job, they have to work very late, then they have to be sleeping to get some rest also. Maybe they could pay attention in the evening time, but the morning time is best. It's better if we can get up early in the morning. Sets the patterns for the day if we can do a spiritual practice early in the morning. And that time may have to vary based upon your schedule with work and all that kind of thing. But if it's possible to in some way honor this sacred time of sunrise, sunset, it's very useful. Probably anyone, if you're taking this course, you're up to doing a little bit more than just lighting a fire and say, Agnaye Swaha, Agnaye Idam Namama, and offer a pinch of rice. You probably can do a little bit more. And so you may want to consider, is it possible to get up at this time and bathe and then be doing practices to prepare for this sacred time of day? This is one great way to empower our spiritual practice, whatever it is. If we're meditating, doing yoga, doing pranayama, doing puja, mantra japa, doing yajna, offerings into the sacred fire. We can empower it greatly just by performing these practices at those sacred times. So the Vedic tradition helped to bring our awareness to those times by giving us this basic practice of reciting the Gayatri mantra, Om Bhur Bhuva Suvaha Tat saviturvarehinyam bhargo devasya dhimahi teyo yo nak prachodayate. It's a prayer for illumination. Tat saviturvarenyam. Tat savitur. Savita is the name of the sun goddess. Give us illumination. Bring your light into our experience, because you are not just the light of the sun, you're the light of life. You're the light of the divine. Let us see that light when we close our eyes. It's not a metaphysical concept. It's not a philosophy. It's an experience that we have when we go into deep states of meditation. We see a light, and they say that that light of the divine, it's like Koti Surya. It's like 10 million suns. The brightness of God is as bright as 10 million suns. And really, Koti means 10 million, but it could mean also just like many, innumerable, countless. So much brighter than even the sun. And we look at the sun, burns our eyes, burns away our vision, burns away our eyesight. It's so bright. We look at the light of God, it burns away all egoism, burns away our attachments, burns away our faults. It's very difficult for people to see because it burns away their ego. For a long time, we may close our eyes in meditation and just see darkness. We have to keep clearing the subconscious mind, keep clearing the attachments, keep doing our practice, keep offering mantras, and then we start to see this light. So the sun is a symbol of that in this prayer. And it's the same energy. It's all from God. So this aspect of the divine, that's divine radiance, divine illumination, divine light, is addressed in this sacred Gayatri mantra. And once that light of God comes into our consciousness, then it starts to affect us. So it's also a prayer, Lord, bring your light into us and influence us to do good deeds, to help other people, to be generous, to be loving, to be compassionate. We start to get the qualities of God when we bring in this light of God through doing these practices. We start to become very selfless, very charitable, very helpful, very kind, very forgiving, and impervious to all these other meaningless things in the world. People insult us, we won't really care because we're established in this experience of divine light. And so we pray for that at this time. And this practice brings our awareness to the sacred nature of that time. It's not a good time for other tasks. It's a good time for our spiritual practice. So hard normally to get consciousness to flow into Sushumna, but at that time it's naturally doing it. It's killing the body. Anything we do at that time, we're going to fail anyway. If we're sleeping, it'll just tend to make us sick. If we eat, it will make us sick. So to be awake, to be praying, to be making an offering at that time, we can take full advantage of this sacred time. And so that's the importance of Sandhya Vandanam, the daily practice of offering water and reciting the Gayatri Mantra in the Vedic tradition. It's the importance of those sacred times and its connection to our anatomy. You know, the world is a macrocosm, they say. The body is a microcosm. Certain things are happening in our anatomy at that time. Cycles are resetting. We change the nostril. And then in the cosmos, you know, we're moving from Ida to Pingala or Pingala to Ida, depending on the day of the week and that sort of thing. Lunar and solar. And then the sun is rising. We can't see the moon anymore, and the sun rises at that time. So in the universe, in the cosmos around us, the same cycle is going on. We're very much connected. We can feel our connection at that time to the cycles in the universe because the body is cycling in the same way. It's all connected by the divine, and the Upanishads say that. They say the light of the sun, light in the sun is the same as the light in the soul of the human being. It's the divine light within everything. It binds everything. if we pay attention to these cycles in nature and the cycles in our body and how they're interconnected, we start to see everything is interconnected. We start to experience that divinity. It's a very beautiful concept, very mystical, very powerful, very important. So this is a good place to stop for now. We can go into what the 5 Pancha Yagyas are next time, the Pancha Maha Yajna, the 5 sacrifices that we're supposed to make in order to pay off 5 debts that we have to society. We've gone through the 21 main fire ceremonies that we're obligated to do in the Vedic tradition. But then, as you remember, there's others. There's these 5 Pancha Maha Yajnas, and there's the 16 samskaras, or the rites of passage. So we'll start to talk about those briefly in our next course. All right. Om.